There's a signal coming from Rome, but few are fully reading it. It's not an official statement, it's not a signed document, but it's perhaps even more revealing. A curt, silent, operational response. Do not grant recognition. This is the indication that, according to what Monsignor Athanasius Schneider revealed in an interview given on March 25th to remnantnewspaper.com, came from the Holy See to block the canonical recognition of a reality linked to the traditional Mass in Europe. A community of pontifical right, already present in the diocese, had simply asked to be formally recognized by the new local bishop. Nothing extraordinary, nothing that canon law does not permit. Yet the bishop, despite having full authority to proceed independently, chose to consult Rome. And Rome responded, no, not a public theological justification, not a disciplinary clarification, just a prohibition. According to Monsignor Schneider, this would be a direct intervention that effectively prevents the stabilization of a traditional presence. A gesture that, read in filigree, seems to fit into a now evident line, containing, slowing down, marginalizing everything that harks back to the ancient liturgy. But the picture becomes even more complex and potentially explosive when considering other statements by the same prelate, also released on March 25th to the same newspaper. Archbishop Schneider doesn't limit himself to denouncing a single episode. He goes further. He points the finger at a dynamic within the Church that he openly defines as damaging: the attacks against the priestly society of St. Pius VI. According to the bishop, it's not just progressive circles that are criticizing the society. Even groups linked to the traditional world, along with cardinals and bishops, have assumed a hostile attitude, going so far as to define the members of the SSPX as schismatics and calling for sanctions. A line that Schneider judges bluntly. This doesn't help. It should be the other way around. The point, for the prelate, is ecclesiological even before it is disciplinary. The Church, he states, is one family, and the fraternity, like it or not, is part of it. To explain the gravity of the situation, Schneider recalls a specific historical precedent: the Arian crisis of the 4th century. A period in which, according to the testimony of St. Basil the Great, even those faithful to the truth found themselves fighting among themselves, while the majority of bishops aligned themselves with error. The image evoked is powerful: a naval battle in the night and fog, in which friendly ships end up hitting each other, unable to distinguish the real enemy. This is exactly what, according to Schneider, is happening today. Hence the appeal: stop internal attacks and join forces, not against anyone, but to demand something specific. A gesture from the Pope. A gesture that, if confirmed, would mark a turning point, granting the Society of St. Pius the King permission to perform episcopal consecrations. A possibility that many would consider unthinkable, but Schneider openly proposes it as a generous and exceptional act, capable of restoring trust and ushering in a new phase in relations between Rome and the fraternity. And here, one of the most controversial passages emerges. Because, according to the bishop, the society is not outside the Church. It is not a separate entity. It is not, strictly speaking, schismatic. The arguments brought forward are concrete. The SSPX names the Pope and the bishops in the canon of the Mass, has received faculties for confession from the Vatican, and, in some cases, has even received official positions. Schneider cites an emblematic fact: the appointment of Monsignor Bernard Fellet, a leading figure in the society, as judge in a canonical investigation into a priest. The question that arises is provocative, but direct. How can a presumed schismatic exercise a role recognized by the same authority that should consider him outside of communion. This is where the discussion broadens further, touching on one of the most delicate issues, the relationship between obedience and schism. According to Schneider, there's a dangerous simplification today, the idea that any disobedience to the Pope automatically equates to a break in ecclesial communion. But that's not the case. The bishop insists not every act contrary to the will of the pontiff constitutes schism, and he offers a concrete and highly sensitive example: episcopal consecrations without papal mandate. They are unlawful, of course, but they are not in themselves an absolute evil, nor automatically a schismatic act. This position openly contradicts a narrative consolidated over the past decades, and which fits into a broader analysis of the current situation of the Church. For Schneider, in fact, we find ourselves in a phase of profound confusion. The magisterium and the liturgy are partially obscured, not annulled, but obscured by an influence he clearly defines: Neo-modernism, a mixture of naturalism and relativism which, according to the prelate, is impacting ecclesial structures and the operational choices of the Holy See. In support of this thesis, a concrete example is cited: the so-called German synodal process, a process that, in Schneider's words, is undermining the very structure of the Church, bringing it closer to a Protestant model. Yet, the bishop observes, Rome would not intervene decisively for years, a silence that clearly contrasts with the firmness shown towards traditional realities. And that's not all. Schneider also provides specific examples of communities linked to the Fraternity of St. Peter, and therefore fully recognized, that were reportedly closed by local bishops without appeals to the Holy See having any concrete effect. A double standard. This is the question that emerges implicitly but forcefully from all the statements. On the one hand, tolerance or slowness in the face of doctrinal drifts. On the other, rigidity and immediate interventions against traditional realities. In this context, Schneider presents the Society of St. Pius VI not as a problem, but as a resource. A reality that, according to the bishop, had the courage to ask uncomfortable questions about the doctrinal ambiguities of the Novus Ordo. Questions that other communities, while sharing some of the same concerns, would not dare raise openly. The reason? Fear. Schneider is explicit. If they started raising these questions, they would be placed under special administration and closed down within a short time. And then, what is criticized today could be recognized tomorrow. This is the perspective the bishop offers, a vision in which, once the crisis is over, the Church could look upon the fraternity not as an anomaly, but as a providential element, a presence that, in times of confusion, guarded and defended essential aspects of faith and liturgy. Hence the final image, that of the episcopal consecrations scheduled for July 1st. Not as an act of rupture, but as a bridge to better times. And perhaps implicitly also towards a Church that will sooner or later have to deal with its own contradictions. What do you think? If you liked the video, comment Amen. God bless you.